time is a construct. So
It's a social construct.
right, right,
I just start
yeah.
I just start quoting from Invictus. If your boss ever says anything, just quote from Invictus. My
I
head is
usually
my head is bloody but unbowed.
yeah, I have to steal that one. I'll have to brush up on Invictus a bit too, you know.
I'm trying to think who that's like. I mean, it may be like one of the most popular poems.
Mm, mm,
I'm
yeah.
trying to think of who
Is
it's
that
by.
you know we what we need is a rule on the podcast that if we don't know anything, you just don't say
Is that the rule?
it. Yeah.
But I mean, I was quoting the most important lines from it.
No, I'm saying don't make me look bad here, you know, because
Mm.
now people are gonna say, look, I'm not gonna take what this guy says. He doesn't even know Invictus.
William Ernest Henley.
Mm, mm. That's what I'm gonna have to read up on this guy.
We might have to throw him on the docket.
Favorite non-Invictus poems by William Ernest Henley.
It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
Is
Look,
that like a
James,
yeah?
you have to get to work on time. We do not care. You have to be here at 11 o'clock.
What is isn't that like what movie is that in? There's probably a handful where I feel like they
Uh,
put that right up on the screen, like at like the beginning or the end or something.
right. That's one where the captain goes down with the ship for sure.
Like, is that like a 300? It's not, but you know,
Leonidas
something
wishes.
on that level. Right, right. So going Red Solo Cup today?
Did you see that?
No.
I am going Red Solo Cup because a bunch of them, through a series of events, I actually got left with about 100 of these. So
Okay, okay. All
guess
right.
I'm using them.
Just thought, you know, I drink. My name's James. I use a Red Solo Cup because I like to party.
I do like to party. But the Red Solo Cup holds ice and water
Mm.
on this
Yeah.
mid afternoon. And after I get done with this, I'm going to go grab some nachos.
Mm. Nice. See, my favorite kind of water has barley hops and or barley you know, malt and hops and yeast in it.
Mm.
That's how I like my water.
So that wasn't a ginger ale you were just sipping on.
No, it's apple juice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like a nice apple juice.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Apple juice is cold, and I'm in the place. That's a charisma line for you, for all
Right.
you charisma fans out there.
You know, a lot of girls like apple juice. A lot of the young ladies these days, they're really getting into apple juice.
Mm. Is that so?
It is. So if
Okay.
you begin to drink apple juice, you go out and about, you're drinking apple juice. You might find yourself a bit more appealing to the young
Huh. It's interesting. Yeah, I
to
haven't
the
thought about that.
women around
Yeah.
you.
I've been getting really into craft ciders as of late.
That does
Not really.
count. Craft
That's
ciders.
no, that was a joke.
Look. Women. It's been scientifically proven women love a nice apple. Apple
Mm,
pie,
mm, mm.
apple cider, apple
Yeah,
juice. You
yeah.
know,
They'll eat apples whether they're supposed to or not. That's I think I read about that somewhere.
that does sound like it's ringing a bell. I can't put my
Yeah,
finger on
yeah.
it, however.
Mm-hmm. And
But
that well, I think it's an old saying, like if you know, the quickest way to get a woman to eat an apple is to forbid her from doing it or something.
okay. Well, hey, from my experience, a lot of these girls they love apples, apple tarts, apple
Mm,
crisps,
mm-hmm.
apple cider donuts.
Hey, it's fall, y'all.
It is fall, and I'm starting to feel it in the morning. Let me tell you.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah,
The
yeah.
the mornings are letting us know that it is the fall of the year. So
Mm-hmm,
break out
mm-hmm.
that apple cider. We want to see
Yeah.
some
Maybe an apple
pumpkin
fritter.
pie, apple fritters, great for the
Mm-hmm,
morning.
mm-hmm. Love them. Love them.
Apple donut, cinnamon, some apple crumbles on it.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
I'm actually from Johnny Appleseed country.
you are.
Yeah, yeah, up in Ohio. Yeah. So
What is the
I know a thing
significance
or
of
two.
Mr. Appleseed and Ohio?
I mean, that's just one of his. I forget where he all was. But I just know there's like plaques. I remember one in like Mansfield, for Johnny Appleseed, like just areas where he planted, his orchards. We always
Mm.
learn about him Did you learn about him in school growing up?
Yeah, we learned about him,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but we didn't really learn where he was. Where he was from.
Mm. I think he might have been from, and we'd have to look this up. I think he might have been from New York, like
Okay,
the, state, New York State.
or where he
But
spread his apples.
yeah, yeah. But he was also, I think he was a Swedish Borgianism, or was into that.
So what?
He
He
had
had a
a,
special kind of apples or
he,
something.
well, he had I mean, his apple, wasn't just like because he loved apples. He kind of had a bit of a religious mission, behind his, spreading apples. He also spread the good word along with it.
Well, thank God for that.
Hmm, hmm.
So he
It's a
wasn't
gift
just a
that keeps on
guy,
giving.
because I think we just framed him as a guy who was just like really like growing apple trees everywhere.
Yeah, just going town to town, just planting apple tree, just some weirdo guy.
Well, not, I mean, maybe he was a bit whimsical, but who knows? Like, after before long, like all the children had apples to eat, and apple cake, and apple
Hmm, hmm.
pies, and
Yeah,
apple,
yeah.
so they fry up the apple skins, and they used to make apple chips. So these were some resourceful individuals. These were definitely some resourceful individuals.
You can do a lot with apples, man.
He can, and Johnny Appleseed. He's one of the first DIYers.
Mm, mm,
This guy's a DIYer.
mm.
He's going town to town,
Started,
apples everywhere, preaching the
started
word.
cultural movement.
So these are the type of people that are good to remember, especially around the fall when you're going, but hanging out with your family. Eating some nice warm meals.
Hmm,
The fall
hmm,
is always a time
hmm,
where I think of nice, warm meals and
hmm, hmm.
good time with
Yep,
the family.
yep, yep, yep. Football and family gatherings and all that. Bonfires. Can't
Frying
beat
up
it.
those apple skins.
Hmm, hmm.
Have a
Yeah.
big basket of them. Big basket of apple skins.
Well, I know, what I'll be sending in my, fall care package to you. At
And
least.
boy, oh boy, am I looking for it.
You know how
I
I do that seasonally. For all our
right,
viewers, they don't know, but I actually send, James a basket of, various, goods, seasonally.
right.
Just
I look forward to it.
hmm,
You know,
hmm,
in the summer, there's a lot of lemon flavored things, a lot of
hmm, hmm. Yep.
green, kind of green
Yeah.
grass, and do a lot of lemon and a lot
Yep.
of
Yep.
yellow. But
Hmm, hmm.
by the fall, it's
Usually.
always apples and
Hmm,
pumpkin and
hmm.
cinnamon and spice,
Cornucopia
nutmeg,
of,
corn.
yeah.
Right. So I like how the different seasons give us different opportunities to decorate,
Hmm.
cook
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
foods, and experience different vibes and flavors, and
Right.
man, what a
I wonder
what
if
a great time of year.
it'd be kind of funny if how we have like, more and more, we have like we just had Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day or
Right.
whatever you want to call it. We have all these different, holidays, and that was to celebrate Italians at one time, right? And like we have St. Patrick's Day, which I mean he what we have all these different holidays. We got Cinco de Mayo, we've got
Right.
Black History Month, things like that. Juneteenth, no, that's if we just start associating different races, different ethnicities with different seasons, you know, and like, because like you were just mentioning different flavors, so it's just like we have like certain, associated foods and things that we do during this time of the year. It's like associated with this group of people, and like we just go through the cycles of all the ethnicities through the year,
Right.
you know.
I'm trying to think. It seems like some of our more ethnic holidays are in the spring, sort of.
It does, yeah, yeah, yeah. It was Cinco de Mayo and St. Patrick's Day, yeah.
Yeah. And also, I guess Juneteenth is technically still spring, but
It is, yeah, yeah. June
Juneteenth,
17th is.
I guess you could. It almost kicks off summer.
Yeah, it's close. It is the 17th, right? Is
It's
it the 17th or is it?
it's not. I think it the federal holiday is the 19th. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay, okay, all right.
But historically, take it from me. Historically, Juneteenth was celebrated just any day around the end of the teens of June.
Mm,
It wasn't like a specific day. It was kind of
mm,
like
mm.
a. It was kind of just like a. It was a cookout over a weekend, really, realistically.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I guess you could. But Memorial Day already kicked off summer, so I guess we got two summer kickoffs now.
yeah.
Memorial Day and Juneteenth, they both sort of kick off summer, but yet they're technically in the spring.
Right, 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 right. Well, just as, in September when we have Labor Day, we're still in summer.
You're right, we are.
Yeah. And that's supposed to be the end of summer, but it's a few weeks early.
Hey, one of my favorite holidays, and I don't care what people say, this holiday's fallen way out of favor, but it's July 4th. July,
Oh
see,
no, I know. It's
I don't care what people say. I love July
yeah.
4th.
Mhm.
July 4th
Mhm.
is always great. July 4th is when July is when the summer is really starting to get going, get cooking. Those long summer days, you can't tell one day from the next. Summer just gets blurry. Like it has
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
summer always has this blur to it. It has
Yeah.
this this nebulousness.
Mhm.
You're almost
Mhm.
like blinded by the light of the sun.
Yeah.
You can end up celebrating July 4th for a week if you're in the right
Yeah. Yeah.
locale around the
Mhm.
right
Mhm. Mhm.
individuals.
Mhm.
July 4th can quickly stretch into a week long celebration for
Yeah.
sure.
Or especially if it's like 4th of July is like a Thursday.
Oh yeah,
It's 4th of July through Sunday.
right.
That's Thursday through Sunday. And probably Wednesday too.
And we have the red, the white, and the blue. The red and the
Mhm.
blue are the two polarities, and then the white of the blinding sun. It's
Mm.
dude. I'm telling you, summer and like even when you go to the beach for 4th of July, the beach is this marginal zone.
Mm.
Summer
Mhm. Mhm.
beach and the crab, the king of the beach, is a marginal
Mhm.
creature of the
Right, right.
sand and the sea. And dude, the summer, it,
Yep.
I love the summer. I love the summer. I'm a
Mhm.
child of
Mhm.
the summer. I love the summer.
Yep.
Uh, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah. 4th of July is always that one where you could you hung out with friends and family. That's why I always had the most fun. And
mm,
my hometown was the county seat, so like we had the big parade. We had we did the fireworks, all that kind of thing. So it was always kind of like a little bit of it was like the best time of the year in the town. Especially, when you're in Ohio and pretty much the rest other 8 months, are winter essentially. So then you just had this one shining moment in the middle of summer. It's like right in the middle of school break too, summer break when you're
mm-hmm,
growing up. It always felt like there was like before 4th of July and after 4th of July.
mm,
As far as like your summer breaks go. And yeah, you could almost do anything. Big family, big gatherings of people,
right.
mixing of friends and family, and adults are like day drunk most of the time. Like you can get away with just doing a bunch of doing almost anything. Um,
So
dangerous with the fireworks, you know.
I love that time of year, man. That summer time of year, and we actually had some. I remember. We had some good times on Tybee Island during the Fourth of July.
That's right. Yep, that too.
I've had some good times, definitely in South Carolina on the Fourth of July. It's they up here. Like I live in full disclosure. I live in North Carolina now, in Durham, North Carolina, and it just seems like they don't really care too much about the
Raleigh
Fourth
was
of
the
July.
worst. That was the worst Fourth of July.
Yeah, they don't they don't
That
they
one
don't
Fourth of
care
July,
about it.
We went out downtown.
I forgot. I
It was a
forgot
ghost
that.
show. It was a
I
ghost
forgot.
town.
I forgot that was Fourth of July. I actually forgot that
Yeah,
was Fourth of July.
it was like
That's why I said, like,
yeah.
in the right locale, Fourth of July can become a
Yeah,
big
yeah,
long.
yeah.
But you have to kind of, I guess, I don't know. I guess as we move into the future, you have to be in a place that sort of does Fourth of July. Not
Right,
everywhere is doing.
I
Not
know.
everywhere is sort
Yeah,
of doing Fourth of July. I
right. I
love
know
Fourth of
people.
July.
Yeah, yeah. I know. Yeah, and not out of even necessarily patriotic,
Yeah, I mean,
love of country. It's just like Fourth of July is.
right.
I mean, it's just
Right.
awesome. It's fun. I don't know what else to
Like
say. Like,
just
cook out,
the
drink beer,
the
fireworks.
the holiday. You know,
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
on Thanksgiving, we're not thinking about any sort of Catholic church or anything. So these holidays are sort of different than their cultural context. They've taken on new cultural If you ask me, they've taken on
Yeah,
new
yeah, yeah,
sort
yeah.
of
No,
cultural
I think so.
contexts.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. No,
you know,
it's definitely more in fashion to sort of poo-poo Fourth of July. It's in like almost like
uh,
good taste to sort of ignore it, or have have a healthy level of disdain for, you know,
right,
for it as it is too
right.
bad. It's
But
yeah.
I just, but at the same time, it's like the function it serves is like a
Hmm.
holiday around
Right.
the peak of summer. Like
Right.
it also
Yes.
has like
Yeah.
a practical function.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I don't know.
Yeah, like we would need something. We would have to do something during that time, like during the heat of summer. Like we could get rid of Fourth of July. Like we're gonna have something.
Right,
I mean, that's just that's where you could go back with any of the holidays and you find like pagan roots or whatever. Are we celebrating Thanksgiving? First dinner of Native Americans and
mm-hmm.
the settlers. Maybe, or have we always had fall harvest feasts? Probably.
Right. We have,
You know, so
in fact,
that's.
well, not to have a holiday episode here, but
Hmm.
Thanksgiving is uh is the opposite of fasting. So like if you're like eating a lot, that's like Thanksgiving. That's what it would be
Mm-hmm.
called.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Because you would have days of fasting and
Hmm.
then days of
Right.
Thanksgiving. So um,
Yeah, that's
eat,
true.
eating
Yeah, that's true.
eating
Yeah,
eating a
that's a good
lot
point.
is known as eating a lot is sort of known as Thanksgiving. If it's like a planned thing, I guess you could just be binge eating. But, eating a lot
Yeah,
is
I
known
call it
as like
gluttony, but
Thanksgiving. I guess you have to do it. That's why I guess you have to dress it up as a nice dinner before you just pig
right,
out.
yeah. I call it Fat Tuesday, but that's kind of I
Well,
usually indulge in other ways. Yeah.
well, Fat Tuesday. That's 6 weeks to the end of winter, baby.
Mm, mm,
That's like we're
mm.
right. Or
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
or no,
yeah.
or yeah.
Well,
Fat Tuesday is before Lent. Before Lent starts, right?
yeah, it's the day before. Yeah, Fat Tuesday,
Okay,
then Ash
right,
Wednesday.
right,
Yeah,
yeah. So it's
yeah,
like, hey,
yeah.
we're getting ready to end. Here's a little party before, or
Hmm.
not a little
Hmm.
party, kind of a big party before Lent.
Right, yeah, yeah.
And,
We're gonna kind of have a blowout here, and then everyone tighten up.
right, and then 6, 7 weeks till spring.
Right, right. Well, that's the thing is like even before Thanksgiving, like you almost have to give. it's almost like a version of a Fat Tuesday because then you go into winter,
right? Or
you know.
Christmas.
Yeah, we're going into Christmas. But
It's
you're heading into winter. You're heading into times where you have to kind of tighten the belt.
right. That's why like Thanksgiving to Christmas is almost like a period of Thanksgiving. Like, there's gonna be
Mm-hmm,
plenty of like cakes and pies and like for that whole
mm-hmm,
month
mm-hmm,
from Thanksgiving to
mm-hmm.
Christmas is almost like one long visit family, visit friends, eatery type situation.
Right, right, yeah. Spend a bunch of money and then no one goes out or does anything.
Right.
Late January to January to February.
And then you have the cold winter. But then in the cold winter, there's a little bit of love in Valentine's Day. You get
That's what I was gonna say.
a little
They got to get us
kiss.
out. They're like, look, we got to get. I mean, everyone's just staying home. They won't,
Yeah,
they don't leave their houses until March.
Valentine's Day is a little bit of warmth in the winter. It's a
Mm,
little bit of hug and kiss in the winter.
yeah, hopefully
Maybe for
not for
some.
yeah. Hopefully. For I think for most it's probably a time of pain and suffering for the men who are
Oh.
getting there. They're like, oh, what am I gonna do? I mean, last year I did this. I can't do that again. I gotta
Right. Well, hey, if the
start small. That's what I tell any guy out there. Start small on Valentine's Day. Do just
the power of love will inspire them, man. The
yeah, right.
by the power of Saint Valentine's.
Yeah.
And
Maybe
then
this
March.
year I didn't do anything for you, and that's just because I realized I love you so much. I couldn't. There's no amount of money I could spend to show my love. So I just said, you know what?
She'll say, then you should have spent it all.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But look, so
Yeah.
then it's Valentine's Day, and then usually the Ash Wednesday is like not too far behind that. So you get a little indulge, and then you tighten up.
Yeah, it kind of depends. Yeah, Valentine's Day or Ash Wednesday, because Easter always falls at sort of a different time,
Yeah, it does.
be in March or in April.
So maybe sometimes
Um,
Valentine's Day can be during Lent.
well, because I think was it last year or the year before Valentine's Ash Wednesday was Valentine's Day. I think it might have been last
Yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah. So that's like around the same
They were the
time.
same day. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes. Which is yeah, which is interesting. But yeah. But yeah, I mean, we're not here to talk about holidays. We're here to talk about
We're
Tracy
not.
K Smith, you know?
We're here to talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
the
I guess, yeah.
lucid Tracy K Smith.
I guess it's just, she gets us in such a festive mood. That must be
Right.
it.
Because,
It's the
you know,
festivities of it. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of her poetry does have a certain, it does feel as there is a certain like childlike zest. Like remember
Mm,
when you're a
mm,
kid, how you would feel on the holidays? Like you feel almost
mm,
like
mm,
swept away in sort of the
mm.
the atmosphere of it all. And Tracy K.
Yeah.
Smith is a poet that can definitely sweep you away in the atmosphere of her poetry.
Mm, mm. It's interesting. Yeah. Interesting you use the word atmosphere. Yeah.
Mm.
No, because I have her book Life on Mars,
Mm.
and her dad worked on the Hubble telescope
That is
and
right.
did he's a scientist, which sort of inspired the book. Many poems in the book, kind of going out, you know, through the atmosphere, through the stratosphere, looking out onto space,
Mm.
and kind of sort of searching for like what is out there, um,
Right, right.
which is kind of interesting. I saw a little interview with her, and she mentioned also that kind of through the death of her father, kind of searching out there. It also is kind of searching out for sort of for God, which is
Mm.
I guess what is it that we're looking for out there?
that is very interesting. As you know, as Tracy K Smith as a poet, searches for her father, as her father search for these keys to take us to this higher realm. As
Mm-hmm.
as human beings, we are sort of looking for divinity out there in space. We're looking for a divinity,
Mm-hmm.
a transcendence. We're looking for a transcendence out there, you know,
Mm-hmm.
traveling to Mars.
Yeah. And talking about transcendence, transcendentalism. I was telling you about that. I read yesterday this essay by Ralph Waldo Emerson on art, and saying great art sort of suggests, points the way, you know
Mm.
towards um, the divine, towards something else. And that's what Tracy K Smith is doing here with her poetry, with her poems. She's kind of maybe pointing the way, not necessarily pointing it directly at what it is, but just at suggestions of what maybe it could be. Maybe it sparks in you what
Maybe almost should
to
be.
search yourself. Yeah.
There's something about the idea of life on Mars, that transcendent, that thing that can cover that great gap. There's an
Mm-hmm.
idea. This is sort of an ancient idea of things being sublunary or superlunary. If
Mm-hmm.
something is beneath the moon, it is more earthly and more. The
Mm-hmm.
things beneath the moon are sort of more chaotic and more. You know, um, kind of more dense and earthly. And the moon is sort of the thing that begins the divine pattern. The moon has this pattern to it, and everything above the moon is sort of superlunary. It has these superpowers. There's these this super this super pattern that we can
Mm-hmm.
sort of
Mm-hmm.
that sort of can guide and shape life down here, can kind of
Right.
help to order life down here. An idea and also that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
has been called the music of the spheres. So
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
maybe mathematics is a certain music of the spheres that Tracy K Smith's
Mm-hmm.
father was using to kind of try to help us you know get beyond ourselves.
Right. Yeah. 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 I mean, there's a certain musical and mathematical quality to poetry, as well. Um, and that makes me think of a little bit of this book I'd read, The Clockwork Universe, with Isaac Newton, and sort of the age of reason, and us kind of trying to, and that's also that's the the Lord's Prayer,
Mm,
is asking for that same pattern in the universe, to
mm.
be reflected down here on Earth, you know.
Right,
Uh,
right.
and so, um, and we kind of, when we write poetry, it's the best words in the best order. We're putting patterns, and we're trying to we're imposing that on language in order to point to meaning, to to sort of learn something new, to
Mm.
see things in a different light, and by doing that, it inspires that within others. Um, so it is kind of interesting, that kind of parallel between art, science, religion. Um, there,
All
yeah.
transcendental exercises.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Which is, yeah. I think that's what's great about just great poets. They inspire that in you, and that's where Tracy K Smith. I mean, that's why Life on Mars won the Pulitzer Prize. I think
Mm,
in 2000, I
mm.
think it was 2011. She's the U.S. Poet Laureate, 2017, 2019. I mean, the artists that are able to point that way towards us, deservedly, get, should have a claim.
I agree. And both, if I'm not mistaken, both of our poems come from Life on Mars.
Correct.
Um,
Yep.
right, right. So
Yeah.
this might be a first where we both chose a poem from the same. work, right? If I'm not mistaken, I think
Yeah,
so.
I believe so. I believe that is true. Yeah.
So this is a a high praise for Tracy K Smith's Life on Mars.
Yeah. Well, and also not to not, a bit of foreshadowing here. Your poem in particular uh it also is a pattern, right? The
Mm,
villain, being a
the
villanelle.
right, the villanelle, a common poetic form which we have covered
Hmm.
on the podcast before,
Right,
and
right. Yeah,
the
yeah.
and the
Was it
villain,
Sylvia Plath?
right? Yes, Sylvia Plath.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, I don't know. Maybe there's something there with these ladies, and they do the villain. The villanelle, I feel like it has a feminine quality, but it also has like sort of a
Mm.
dark sort of underworld quality. But it also can have sort of a sing song, like a sing song quality. So there's a lot of interesting pieces coming together with the villanelle, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just interesting how something that was used as sort of like a pastoral song or a
Hmm.
song of sort of
Hmm.
living in the countryside has come to mean villain, has come to mean someone who is villainous, or
Mm.
and the villains always have their sort of they always sort of sing their sad song. So it's just the villanelle just sort of has a an interesting history.
Yeah. Well, I love in a villanelle if the, poet, kind of does this is where through that recurrence when, and the phrasing is different, you know it kind of brings out this sort of, or even if it's the same phrase repeated, through its kind of recurring through its recurrence, through it being sort of placed among other lines, it kind of brings out new and different meaning, in it.
Mm,
And there's always like, you're reading the same line over again,
right.
but there's also like this sort of surprise that comes along with it, because you see it in a different light each time, um
Mm.
if I she kind of does that a little bit in yours. I wish I had like a good concrete
Okay,
example to
well,
show you
the poem that
that,
I
but
the since we bring it up, the poem that I
yeah, let's just,
chose
yeah.
to do was Solstice. We'll go ahead and bring it up, and we can talk about it a bit. And what you were talking about with the the same line being interpreted, that I believe that's called like recontextualization. So that you
Oh,
know
yeah, yeah,
that
yep.
the way that we can like sort of that recontextualization with the different with the same line over and over again, is the villanelle gives us a great opportunity for that. And this is Solstice by Tracy K Smith. And then see, as a villanelle, is you can see we have the repeating line sort of serving as a refrain, and the rhyme scheme. This isn't as sort of tight, as relying as heavily on structure as some villanelles, you know, but it still definitely is the uh, fits the villanelle format. So I mean, hey, I mean, if
Yeah,
without further ado, I guess I'll go ahead and
yeah, yeah,
give it a read.
let's do it.
This is Solstice by Tracy K Smith. They're gassing geese outside of JFK. Tehran will likely fill up soon with blood. The Times is getting smaller day by day. We've learned to back away from all we say and more or less agree with what we should. Whole flocks are being gassed near JFK. So much of what we're asked is to obey, a reflex we'd abandon if we could. The Times reported 19 dead today. They're going to make the opposition pay. If you're sympathetic, knock on wood. The geese were terrorizing JFK. Remember how they taught you once to pray? eyes closed on your knees to any god. Sometimes small minds seem to take the day. Election fraud, a migratory plague, less and less surprises us as odd. We dislike what they did at JFK. Our time is brief. We dwindle by the day. So, very powerful poem from Tracy K Smith,
Hmm.
and the Villanelle
Yeah.
format. And like I said, this is now now people kind of get a sense of what I meant by it wasn't like as tight, quote unquote, as some Villanelles. Because the lines, even though the lines rhyme, the rhyme scheme was similar to most Villanelles. The lines changed. And so we do get that but we still get that recontextualization, but also with a
Hmm.
little added bump of sort of almost a story sort of evolving as we get go throughout the poem.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
at first they're gassing geese outside of JFK. We go from that to whole flocks being gassed near JFK.
Hmm.
And then we go to the geese were terrorizing JFK, almost to almost a little justification to we
Hmm.
dislike
Hmm.
what they did at JFK.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what Tracy K Smith does here is she takes the villanelle popular poetic form that has that recontextualization we were talking about, but subtle changes to the line almost almost serve to enunciate the subtle different readings we would get with that classic recontextualization. So yeah, I definitely like how she did that. And it's also interesting. Tracy K. Smith, she worked on the radio for a time. You know, um, she had like a radio program in some capacity, and it's interesting because there are elements of this poem that almost read like radio broadcast. I mean, they're talking about the times and reporting, and you know um, just like the way that this poem seems to be almost constructed from little bits of radio broadcasts. I'm almost like it's composed of little snippets that she's getting just from
Hmm. Hmm.
flipping, the way that in our society we sort of flip through our 24-hour news cycle.
Hmm.
We flip through
Yeah.
the 24-hour news cycle, we catch
Hmm.
little blurbs on our
Hmm.
phones, and
Yep.
little pieces of news here and there, and one story sort of might stick with us, and we kind of purposefully follow that story. And I believe,
Yeah.
like, what's happening with the geese might be sort of something that sort of sticks in Tracy K Smith's cross, so to speak. you know but
Hmm.
um but there's sort of plenty of horror to go around, as the 24 news cycle would suggest. 19 dead today. We're going to make the opposition pay. And Tehran will likely fill up with blood
Hmm.
and more or less agree with what we should.
Hmm.
We're sort of, we sort of we sort of we sort of use the 24-hour news cycle to fill up the Overton window, so to speak. The Overton window is this idea of what is permissible and not permissible in polite discourse. And this talk of 19 dead, and the bloody overseas, and the election fraud, and the migratory plague. These different snapshots of news we that make up the poem, these elements are used to almost fill up the Overton window. So the line, the two lines, we've learned to back away from all we say and more or less agree with what we should. That line serves to illustrate the parameters that this discourse is sort of taken place
Yeah.
in. Because we could see a world where the times may where the news may decide not to report on 19 dead today, or you know um maybe may not have such hawkish sort of tendencies, or a tendency to sort of rile up or sensationalize. And these sort of these sort of sensationalized, heightened news stories may serve to, create a sense of anxiety in the person that is experiencing this frenzy.
Mm,
And that's why towards the end, our time is brief. We dwindle by the day. Um, you know, I almost see the I almost see the amount of people who are sort of sickened by this sort of thing, or the amount of people who are willing to do something about this sort of thing is dwindling.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
hey, and that's kind of what I see is why the poem is called Solstice. It's like, the solstice, it doesn't last forever. It's like a bright the solstice is almost like a spotlight. um the solstice, it's almost like a hinge of the year. Like the year almost hinges on the solstice. It's the solstice is a peak. um in this peak, in this hinge, in this frenzy, we have this window of appropriateness illustrated by all these disparate news stories that seek to illustrate some point, some bloody point that is in a way beyond us. In that fifth stanza almost illustrates that, like what we talked about earlier, that cry for transcendence. Remember how they taught you once to pray, eyes closed on your knees, to any god. You know, it's almost like a call to childhood. And like the solstice itself calls to holiday, like we spoke about earlier in the podcast. We're calling to childhood. We're calling to transcendence, in and we're also calling to maybe something like the wisdom of a child, the wisdom of a child to pray, or the wisdom of a child to lean on their parents when sometimes small minds seem to take the day, minds who are small, minds who are not focused on anything transcendent. Because the solstice is ultimately a cosmic event. So for the solstice and the the height of our 24-hour bloody news cycle, as these things sort of rub against each other and clash against each other, maybe we might have to become as little children to sort of seek that transcendence and find that place where we can sort of overcome this staticky white the static white noise, or even overcome a sense of nihilism. uh that maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's why our time is getting smaller by the day, just like how after the solstice the days get shorter. um so the poem almost serves as a tacit call to action. And even on this podcast, I've been sort of critical of other, not necessarily too critical, but sort of had critical of sort of call to actions. But Tracy K Smith with this poem, in the sort of artistic context of it all, man, does she really knock it out the park. This is an excellent poem by an excellent poet. The way she's bringing so many disparate themes together, it's almost like the way she brings these disparate sort of news stories together and illustrates the point. I mean, and I'm almost stopping myself because I could go on, but
Mm-hmm.
I just giving you an opportunity to
Oh
jump
yeah.
in there.
I wanted you to go on until you're, let it go. No, I think it's also, I think it's great the way that she uses kind of the villanelle. And if I'm not mistaken, a villanelle, like a traditional one, would have a few more stanzas, right? Am
Mm,
I right on that? Would it be
I think
a tad bit longer,
I,
or
I
am I wrong on that?
I know. I thought it might be like five of the three. Then one
Okay,
of the.
okay,
I thought it
okay,
was a
maybe.
five and one, but it
Okay.
might be a six and one now that I think about it. I thought it was. I don't know. I think it depends because there's the
Mhm.
American Villanelle and.
Mm. Well, that doesn't that was just a little thought that I had. But I think what is great about her using this villanelle form for this in it the way it does kind of repeat it has that recurrence, that recontextualization, but it does. illustrate that, sort of that news cycle, or as, when you're kind of, even if it's just, over a period of a few days, or, the story keeps on coming up, about the geese. They're having
Mm,
this issue with geese outside of JFK. It's, for whatever reason, their migratory flight pattern, we have a whole flock, we have flocks of them outside of JFK. They're ruining our flights, our plans, and then, you
right.
see what they're doing to them over time. And also the way she kind of, she has a way of, you know in between, um these, the repeating rhyming lines, in the middle, that's where we're seeing things about like Tehran. And there's this, sandwich in between. We have these issues that are going on, outside of our world, big, maybe bigger issues, or, that we're kind of, these sort of small, local stories, and these bigger international
Mm,
stories. And the parallel almost between them, the way we treat the birds, this nuisance, all of a sudden these migratory flocks, we're gassing them outside of JFK. You could say it's the same thing they're doing in the Middle East, and with their issues, in Gaza, and
mm,
with Israel. Not to get into politics there,
right.
but there's, there's kind of almost,
There's
there
a parallel
seems,
there for
yeah,
sure.
right,
Definitely.
with how we, and hey, sometimes small minds take the day, um, instead of, I'm sure there are some, you could have a more holistic view, and you could make decisions on the geese that would, you could solve your problem and not have to kill all the geese, you know.
Mm.
We might be able to coexist.
Right.
Might be able to do that with some international issues as well.
And I feel like that sentiment is sort of expressed in the remember how they taught you once to pray.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's almost like a echo. It's almost like an echo back to don't remember. Don't you also have a childhood, or you know, or an echo back to our own humanity, sort of, so to speak.
right, right. And even like our own, um, maybe inability to solve our own issues.
Mm,
You pray to God about it. So
right.
maybe that, might be better than, you know gassing all the geese. But, um, yeah, and I mean the solstice, it can be a height, it can also be a low point.
It can. It
It
can.
can be, and so it's both. If it's in the summer, 4th of July too, right before that point,
Right.
we have a height, and in the winter, when we have our winter solstice, I mean that's the darkest day of the year, you know.
Right.
Um, but going with, dwindling by the day and our time is brief, it does make it feel more like this is like the high point,
Mm-hmm.
as, to your point of, now the days are getting shorter.
Right.
um but but yeah, it is kind of, it is a hinge. And
Right. Exactly.
yeah, so, um yeah, I think this is also a great one. Also, I don't, I hesitate to say it's like iambic pentameter, but all the lines are 10
Mm.
syllables.
Are they the
Um,
same? Oh, I didn't even count the
I
syllables of it.
I did, just to see, but it kind of is. It's sort of a loose. I don't know if they're all like iams necessarily, but you know they're gassing geese outside of JFK. You wouldn't
Mm.
say it like that. That's, you know.
Yeah, right, right. But still, and but that was a you brought up some very interesting points about how like we have this contrast between sort of a more local national story versus the
Hmm.
more disparate
Hmm.
intimations of a more international news story.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I but if I could highlight this fourth um stanza, they're going to make the opposition pay if you're sympathetic. Knock on wood. The geese were terrorizing JFK. That's almost like a a lot of section that sort of pulls away from the section that in that asks about God, that like kind of goes to something transcendent. The knock on wood, that's sort of like a superstition, you know, and a lot
Right.
of religions sort of frown on superstition.
Mm-hmm.
Superstition is seen, it's sort of like a way that we can kind of make the universe coherent without God's influence, sort of like away
Mm-hmm.
from God's sight. So
Yeah.
to they're going to make the opposition pay, knock on wood,
Mm-hmm.
knock on
Mm-hmm.
wood, but it's something that we still do. And it's just interesting how the third line of that stanza is, the geese were terrorizing JFK, almost like a
Right.
justification of what the geese were doing.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to highlight her Tracy K Smith's use of the word terrorizing. The geese were terrorizing JFK.
Right.
That's
Right.
that's how you say a lot without saying
Mm-hmm.
much at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like the migratory bird just
Mm-hmm.
passing through a
Mm-hmm.
migratory place like an airport. That was also a very good point you made. How the birds were migratory and they have a plan versus
Mm-hmm.
us, traveling in our plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yep.
we all have these plans, but
Mm-hmm.
then the geese are terrorizing
Right.
JFK.
Right.
So then now
Yes.
then
Right.
we contrast that with going back to the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
What are the individuals in the Middle East accused of doing
Right.
and being?
Right.
Terrorizing,
Right.
being
Right.
terrorists.
Right. Yep.
Then
Yep.
really they get gassed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you could make the argument maybe in both cases they're just trying to live, or survive or go
You
about their
def
business. We sort of
Exactly.
in saying that the geese are terrorizing, it gives the geese intention behind our inconvenience.
It does.
Um, yeah, as if the geese just flew in and said, like, let's fuck this up.
The geese were
Yeah.
jealous of how great the
Right,
airport was.
right,
The
right.
airport was working so great, and the geese were
Yeah, right,
jealous of it.
exactly. They're like, my two wings only carry me. They have two wings and they're carrying hundreds. It's ridiculous. It's
the
blasphemous.
the geese were jealous of our way of life.
Right, yeah. Well, they hated us for our freedoms.
Shout out to the early
Yeah.
2000s kids.
Right, yeah, exactly. So yeah, but I did notice that too, because with I think that's a good point with the superstition, and then we go to sort of God and what we were talking about earlier with um God or
Transcendent.
transcendent, and this sort of idea that the universe works on like is like a clock, you know, and that
Right.
there's this that God's will is done in heaven and on earth, you know,
Mm,
and the more clock-like, the more ordered everything is, that is more um that's almost like closer to God in a sense, And so
right.
with this, if you're sympathetic, knock on wood, meaning like, hey, good luck. There's it's chance.
Right.
We're sort of leaving this up to chance, um, instead of saying the Lord's Prayer, on your knees like you were when you were a child, and asking for the order that is in heaven to be also here on earth.
Mm.
Um, which if we were, I don't know, there's almost an argument that if that was the case, if we were striving for that, then would we gas the geese? Maybe they're supposed to be there and maybe we aren't. Maybe we should change our flight patterns
Hey,
to be in line with them.
there's an argument for that. And I really like what you said about the order that is in heaven,
Hmm.
the sort of the higher ideals of heaven,
Hmm.
may they also be present on earth. That's kind of
Hmm.
like Tracy K Smith's father, the mathematician. That's almost like what he's after, like
Hmm.
as he's doing
Hmm.
his math, as he's like working out his problems with mathematics, and as we work out our poetry.
Hmm.
It's a hope, it's a faith that
Hmm.
things that are represented in heaven, things that are these higher forms that are almost separate from us. May these things be not so separate from us and be present in our life. You know, be may these things be present in our reality.
Yeah. But in a way, it's interesting because the scientist or the astronomer, the they're looking out uh, into the universe, into the order, you could say, into God's creation. Trying to learn from the order of the universe to then you know maybe it somehow it helps us, right?
Mm,
um, with having a better understanding of our own the inner workings of our world. uh, but the poet and many artists almost have a sort of almost, I don't know, you could almost say this is a solstice, right? That's like the height. You're looking way out there to
mm,
figure out what's going on down here. Whereas the poet Tracy K Smith, she's looking internally to
mm,
find um, and finding order and putting what's internal in order here on the page. Um, so that's, I don't know if I'm like quite making the point that I want to, but
mm. No, I
there,
could
there's a
understand.
parallel. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
almost
could.
it's kind of opposite in a way, if that makes
Right,
sense.
because it's almost like, well, it's almost like, the scientists, they have their different measurements, their, their metrics and their, their weights and their count and their balances and things like that. But the poet almost has their body and their life and their sort of
Mm-hmm.
sensory experience to sort of glean glean an information from what is essentially the chaos of existence,
Mm. Yeah,
Ex-
yeah.
so, like, they may have different tools, but consciousness is almost the tool of the artist, you know
Mm-hmm,
um
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
and the idea that consciousness has a certain parameter, a certain tangibility. Hey, we're in the realm of metaphysics. I mean,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and there's no limit to how far we can take. There's, I mean, there's no limit. There's no limit to the levels of interpretations of the metaphysical experience, the metaphysical phenomena. Um,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'd say the soul is sort of fathomless, um, just as perhaps the universe is, right? I mean, we're it's turtles all the way down. We're
and I mean to be and
we're a galaxy,
yeah, I mean, we're a galaxy. I mean, like I said, like these things, and then sort of these things and these themes, they exist in almost like a hyper reality. Because if we were to somehow go into ourselves and find some sort of inner peace and escape the wheel of samsara, all the different things you can say. I mean, that might that might be life on Mars. That might be life overflowing, life
hmm
overabundant.
Well, it
Make
might be science fiction, which leads to my poem.
it does, yeah, it
Yeah.
could be. And almost basically what I'm trying to say is, if you could be present anywhere, you're almost present everywhere,
Right. Right. Yep. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so, but that was Solstice by
Yeah.
Tracy K Smith. And
It's a great one.
and then you also did a poem by Tracy K Smith
I
that
did.
is from the same work.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, is your poem is a bit more free verse, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get
I mean,
into
there's couplets. There's 10 couplets, and
yeah,
then
10
we kind of have
couplets.
a single line there that sort of sums it up. Um, I'll go ahead and read it, and then yeah, I'll get into it as I do. So,
Okay.
life on Mars, sci-fi, sci-fi. There will be no edges but curves, clean lines pointing only forward. History, with its hard spine and dog-eared corners, will be replaced with nuance. just like the dinosaurs gave way to mounds and mounds of ice. Women will still be women, but the distinction will be empty. Sex, having outlived every threat, will gratify only the mind, which is where it will exist. For kicks, we'll dance for ourselves before mirrors studded with golden bulbs. The oldest among us will recognize that glow, but the word sun will have been reassigned to a standard uranium neutralizing device found in households and nursing homes. And yes, we'll live to be much older, thanks to popular consensus. Weightless, unhinged, eons from even our own moon will drift in the haze of space, which will be, once and for all, scrutable and safe. So that one, yeah, couplets, and no, you could, yeah, you say free verse, um, but it's not like there's end rhyme, but there's plenty of like and unlike sounds, plenty of like sounds that sort of power through this and almost give it a feeling of um, there's this kind of feeling of rhythm and sort of feeling of um, not end rhymes, but close enough to it. You know what I mean? It's almost like I what I love about this poem is just how she uses those sounds to sort of pull you through the line. There's this rhythm here, but it's like when you say um, women will still be women, but that the way that the way we kind of break up the line, with that it's Sajura. It's not right in the middle, but
Right.
that women will still be women, but the distinction will be empty. Sex, having outlived every threat, will gratify only the mind, which is where it will exist. You know, we kind of have this, that sex being at the end there, going to the next end, which is in the middle line. Threat, you know, will gratify the only the mind. Um, you know,
Mm-hmm.
which is where it will exist for kicks, will so all these, almost all the way through, we kind of have, it's almost like this pull, you know,
Mm.
um,
A shuffle
which I just really
almost.
appreciate.
It's almost
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
blues shuffle.
You're right, exactly. It's not, where like this is iambic pentameter and rhymes where it's like a marching band music,
Right.
almost, it is, it flows and it still kind of goes back and it still goes back and forth, but
Dare I say it
you know,
has a swing.
it does. It has swing, absolutely. So even, in the end, if I go, the where we have, eons from even our own moon, there's so many little spaces here where I just like love these sounds. Eons from even our own moon will drift in the haze of space, which will be, once and for all, scrutable and safe. That space and safe,
Mm.
when we get to safe, like it feels safe. We kind of almost get to a place of home,
Right.
because of, it's sort of this, it calls back to that space. Um, there's just, I don't know. This is where it's like when, that saying, know the rules, so you can break them like an artist.
Right.
you know that this is a perfect example of her doing this as a poet. Like this is having like command of language, command of rhythm, of line. To be able to do this, you have to it takes an extraordinary amount of skill. Um so just the construction of the poem is fantastic in that regard. Um But getting into more of like what sort of like this poem is about.
Okay.
Speaking, kind of going back to what you had just mentioned with when I had mentioned sci-fi, you kind of have to remember, this thought of, we're talking about having the will, sort of God's will being in heaven, also being done on earth, finding this, this sort of clockwork universe. Um, it is science fiction almost in a regard when we try
Mm,
to make everything clean and easy and safe, And so that's something I remind myself like this is sci-fi. This is not real,
right.
It is science fiction. And something that she kind of points to that I've realized with a lot of science fiction, and what kind of helped me sort of realize that, well, this is my opinion or conjecture, is that our conceptions of the future are more of a, actually, don't say anything about what the future actually is. They're a reflection of our present. And so
Right.
um, we are projecting into the future, our present moment, and and thinking that everything's going to be, you know, um, sort of cleaned up, and that this first couplet sort of speaks to that with, there will be no edges but curves, clean lines pointing only forward. You think of
Mm,
like this future as like it's just always reaching out into the distant. We think about heaven and hell. We say
we do.
it's an eternal place, and like it just stretches. You're going to be there for an eternity into the future. Well, eternity, infinite place, it would stretch just as far back. We don't think of it in that terms. We just think of it always going forward, never
Right.
backwards, right? So, these clean lines pointing only forward, I'm thinking of, those, that like 1960s, kind of style, like with the Star Trek,
With the
ship.
Jetsons,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
Jetsons,
yeah,
Star Trek. Yeah.
yeah. And but this is, what are we doing? There'll be no edges but curves. We're cleaning everything up. I mean,
Right.
even in our own days and times with, we're kind of trying to rewrite our own past to make it, we're always doing that, right? We're always trying to
Right.
clean things up, right? Um, we're always trying to get out those edges, that make history kind of, sort of difficult or you know, uncomfortable.
Mm,
And that's what this poem is about. It's like almost removing uncomfortability, right? So that's
right.
why it's also sci-fi. History, with its hard spine and dog-eared corners, will be replaced with nuance. I find that kind of interesting.
No, that's
Just like
very interesting.
yeah, just like the dinosaurs gave way to mounds and mounds of ice. That kind of recalls back. Some say it will end in fire, some say it will end in ice. Right?
Right.
It's almost like this kind of cold, uncaring indifference. Perhaps the dinosaurs gave way
Mm,
to.
right. And the dinosaurs were already like, cold-blooded reptiles.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But history with its hard spine, because it's almost like history with its hard spine, like this. I'm thinking of a book, of course, right? And that's what she's sort of alluding to with in dog-eared corners, right? It's a story, and because with its hard spine, it's almost like because there are facts, like there are historical facts, there are things that actually happened. We always are reinterpreting these things, right? But
Right.
in its dog-eared corners, we all, like we're talking about Johnny Appleseed, like why do we all know about Johnny Appleseed, right? He's in that dog-eared corner, in one of those dog-eared corners of history for some reason. That guy just,
Right.
the Battle of the Bulge, or whatever, what have you. These, like, we have these historical, landmarks that we always kind of, we always go back to. But in this conception of the future, these are going to be replaced with nuance, um,
Mm,
which it's almost like a grain. You know, this is
okay.
a this is this is a grain of. um, which I mean, you know, could be good or bad, but it's sort of a graying of sort of history and of what happened, what the past is.
It's like,
In
well,
the
when history, I see it as like, it's almost like, the interesting thing about sci-fi is sci-fi thinks that it's like, so advanced technologically, and that it's like almost sort of beyond, like, sort of like religion, or these ideas of transcendence. In the previous poem we have these ideas of transcendence with illusions of children praying on their
hmm
knees, and
yeah,
this
yeah,
is sort of a vision of transcendence that is beyond, where people will imagine they are beyond that. But little do
hmm
they know, this is a mythological sort of place. This is like, sci-fi is really mythological. It's the idea that
right,
technology has saved us. Technology has
hmm
literally
hmm
placed us amongst the gods. Because, like,
hmm hmm
so not only are we leaving edges behind, not only are we leaving uncomfortability behind, we're leaving history behind.
right,
Um,
yeah,
in a, in a being that can sort of leave history behind as a god. A being without history is sort of a god, like, and it's
yeah,
kind of interesting how I wrapped up the last segment by talking about the eternal present. this
hmm
this
hmm
this is an illustration of the eternal present.
right,
Like,
right,
and just as women will still be women, but the distinction will be empty
hmm
sex.
hmm
It's almost like the, like, these are attitudes of our day about gender and what really
right,
is gender. And
yes,
sex, having outlived every threat, will gratify only the mind, which is where it will exist. you know um
hmm hmm
these sort of our attitudes about sex and what is sex and is not sex, they already sort of exist in the mind, with everything from the proliferation of pornography to sort of our how we date via the internet, and
hmm
swiping left and right. These sort of things, they already exist in the mind. But Tracy K Smith, and it's kind of as a contemporary poet, she's sort of able to place us in our present moment and sort of transcendent by examining how exactly we would uh, cry out for our own divinity, being
hmm
beyond the sun, being
hmm hmm
beyond our lives of being older, even being
hmm
beyond our own moon. Which, I think earlier we talked. Didn't we just talk about the idea of
yeah,
sublunary and
hmm
superlunary?
yep,
We
yep,
would be beyond our own moon in those
right,
high patterns. We'd be
right,
in those higher, we'd be in those higher patterns, and we'll be in that eternal presence in the haze of space, which will be once. Space will be something that is almost done one time by a heavenly group of people on this spaceship, and for all, scrutable and safe.
yeah. I mean, it goes to that point of you're making of the sort of super lunar or super lunar, where we should be in the instead of bringing I keep on using the same thing from the Lord's Prayer. Instead of bringing that will down here, we've gone up into it.
Right.
You know, and so in this we should be everything should be orderly and safe and scrutable, understandable. You know,
Mm, right.
once and for all. Once and for all, we will understand it and we will be safe. That
Right.
is science fiction.
Exactly. That
you
is
know,
science
uh,
fiction, which is a
yes,
type of mythology. It is a type of
yeah,
end
yeah,
time,
hmm
eschatological,
yeah,
transcendent mythology,
yeah,
where we can sort of we
hmm
can use our tech. I mean, it is. I mean, and we can take it back to Stanley Kubrick's,
yes,
the Space Odyssey.
yep, 2000, yeah, yep, 2001, yep,
Our technology will allow us to transcend ourselves. These are very Aquarian ideas that are sort of in the age of Aquarius. And and where we are taking it there to the age of Aquarius, the ideas of surrounding the age of Aquarius, that is how God enters into the idea of technology through sort of that Aquarian energy, the Aquarian technological advanced energy.
Hmm.
And this and because like you know, being beyond the hard spine of history is being beyond the hard spine of the Judeo-Christian tradition. You
That is true. Yeah,
be
it's kind of
you
like
know
yeah.
being known as people of the book. That's just what I was gonna say.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, no, I was gonna say kind of like going back to our Charles Simic episode with him, being underneath the, the church clock, the church clock stopping.
Mm,
In the same way, yeah, we're going beyond the book, right? And, and science fiction is a sort of mythology, and the thoughts of the future are imaginary, right? They are um, mythological there. We often think of the past as being mythological, um, but the future is as well. And how one way in which I noticed that was watching old episodes of Star Trek. I watched the
mm.
first season of Star Trek, and um, oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name, Captain Kirk. He's dreaming. This is 1961 or 1963. He's apparently, they're way out into the future. He's on it, going to different planets. He's dreaming of one day being able to have a ranch, and he's got this, beautiful blonde wife, on horseback, in
Mm.
his, and he's got like, out in his, property. I'm like, yeah, this is something that someone in 1960s wants, like that's
Right.
the dream for someone in 1960s. You're telling me this guy, 1,000 years in the future, he's still thinking about it? Yeah.
He's on a spaceship. He's on a
Right, yeah,
spaceship
exactly. That's what I'm like, what?
thinking about a horse.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, sure.
Right.
And just with this, today in today's age, we're thinking of women will still be women, but the distinction will be empty. Now when we imagine the future, our future is, there's no difference between, the genders. There's,
Mm.
everything's clean, white. This is how we imagine where everybody's the same. You see all these different science fiction movies where they're all wearing like these all white like space jumpsuits, and everyone's got,
Right.
clean, like they're like, I don't know, bald, or they have like short hair and everything. Like, this is a conception of, what we think it'll be. And what I find interesting too is that even in the future they've dealt with the past.
Mm.
That's one of the first things is history with its hard spine and dog-eared corners will be replaced with nuance. In the future, we have to deal with this past. We we in
Mm.
we have a conception that we've cleaned up history in the future,
Right.
which I don't know what exactly that says, but I find that kind of fascinating.
If I could piggyback off of what you're saying, it's interesting because like that Star Trek example in the first season, they're in the future, but they're thinking of the past. Just like
Hmm.
how we're in the
Hmm.
technical past thinking of the future, it's sort of like a tautology. But in this poem,
Hmm.
they're also thinking of the past because they have fun by in this poem they have fun in mirrors studded with golden bulbs, just like little, the same thing little girls have in their room. Not even little girls,
It
but
was
even
Hollywood.
even women have it in their room. They have the mirror with the bulbs around it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, like
that. Yeah, that's like a callback. You know, have, that's like a callback to the past. That's like 1920s Hollywood.
right.
That's backstage. In the dressing room,
But they have a word like it. Don't they have like a
a
word
vanity.
for? Yeah, a vanity. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Like it's like that's a it's a like that's like they're calling back to for kicks, like
Hmm.
just like
Yes.
sex will seem as antiquated as Homes on the Range, just like
Right.
sex and just
Well,
I guess girls doing their makeup or
yeah. Well, and it's all selfish too, because think. sex having outlived every threat will gratify only the mind. It'll just be for us, you know,
Mm,
just for me, gratify, to gratify my mind, you know, which is where it will exist, right? It exists in the mind. For kicks, we'll dance for ourselves, you know. And it's funny because this is 2011, so social media had taken off, right? We had Facebook, we had Twitter even in
yeah.
2011. We didn't have TikTok
No.
in 2011. And so it's kind of funny that, you you could almost say, hey, just like science fiction always seems to, you know, Jules Verne, basically,
Art
inventing
imitates
this.
life.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you. So, you know, it is almost like the phone, us looking into the phone, dancing into the phone for ourselves, for entertainment,
Okay.
um, in which we do the same thing with our phones and sex, through Tinder, so all those different dating apps. It's kind of all about the mind. Um,
Right. And another interesting thing on that is, how like they're in the future, how this alleged future, they're having visions of the past, like we
hmm
said with the, like the Star Trek example, he's imagining he's on a ranch, like
hmm
these light, like they're imagining light bulbs in the past,
hmm
like, a old school vanity. In
Yeah.
this
Why would they
poem,
need?
they're
Yeah.
yeah, they have this in this poem, they have this high-tech standard uranium
Right.
neutralizing
Yep.
device where
hmm
apparently they're powering things based on nuclear energy, but it's still found in households and nursing homes. Tracy K Smith might have shown a bit of her hand with that line. Like, we have all this high-tech stuff, no edges, only curves, yet there are still households and nursing homes.
That is interesting. That is
maybe
interesting. Yeah.
maybe she showed her hand similarly to how the Star Trek writer showed
Right.
his hand a
Right.
little bit.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because you would think like, oh, okay, are there really households? Maybe we still maybe like The Giver, or some of those sort of dystopian kind of books. Maybe we have something that mimics the family, but isn't truly the family.
Mm,
Um, but kind of going back a little bit, and saying that, after the after the line about for kicks we'll dance for ourselves before mirrors studded with golden bulbs, the oldest among us will recognize that glow. And then tells us, but the word sun will have been reassigned. That glow also, you know going back to us dancing for ourselves. I think that glow is maybe, that glow, that shine, that the warmth that you feel from others love.
mm,
you know, the oldest among us will recognize that glow, whether that's, what we would have received from sex, with an actual person that you love, where it's not just about gratifying your own mind, but about connecting with somebody, because in this is a future that is disconnected, right? So, for kicks, we'll dance for ourselves. We aren't dancing with other people. Dancing is
mm,
supposed to be something you do with other people, for
mm.
fun, you know,
Okay,
and
I can see that aspect of it.
yeah, and so the oldest among us will recognize that glow, and but the word sun, what else? The sun gives us warmth, gives us, that is almost like the warmth of the father. um
Right.
kind of going back to, even, we're talking about like pagan holidays, also, sun god. We're no longer living by the rhythms of the sun, right? We had this
Right.
standard uranium neutralizing device found in households and nursing homes. Now our sun is
Mm,
something that neutralizes uranium, right? That
right.
protects us from our power source.
Mm,
Because it now, I'm assuming it's nuclear energy that's, is,
right.
like you
Right.
had mentioned, is what's powering us. So now our sun isn't the thing that's powering us, it's the thing that's protecting. It kind of serves a similar purpose, but it's been subverted.
Right. And it's also standard. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's a
yeah.
a standard uranium
hmm
neutralizing device. I guess something that everybody has. So maybe that's why it's in households and nursing homes. maybe
Yeah.
she was kind of caught between a rock and a hard place with sort of illustrating that point.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's, in households and nursing homes, like it's in the home, it's in, where people are, where
Right.
they stay. I guess if she used, you know, domicile or uh
Right, maybe domicile or old person unit or elderly unit or something like that.
it almost I mean in this way it kind of it gives it allows us to understand because, maybe if she used
Right,
some, future saying for it, we'd be like, oh,
because because we'll live to be much older, you know.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and yes, we'll live to be much older. Yeah, like there's almost like, yeah, we get to live to be much older, but it doesn't feel like a consolation, right? It doesn't feel like a
Right.
prize here,
It
you
just
know?
says thanks to popular consensus. It's almost like, of course,
Yeah.
we live older.
Well, yeah, because we've gotten we've outlived every threat, you
Right,
know? We've
right,
outlived every threat. As you said, it's all standard, There are no edges but curves, just
right.
clean lines pointing forward, you know? Um,
We have transcended our mortal coil.
yes.
Weightless, unhinged, eons from even our own moon. So we're super lunary to the max. We're with the gods, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Weightless, unhinged. Yeah, nothing is holding us down.
Man, just I've just read a bit of Greek mythology over this last week, and it's just hitting me. Just humans, we just have this desire to be among the gods, so to speak. Just
Right, right.
above ourselves, beyond
Mm-hmm.
ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
To transcend ourselves.
Right.
And if I may make a point, and if I may borrow a point from the poem like we did earlier, Solstice, this poem is almost like a solstice. It's a summer solstice. It's a height. It's a mythological vision of the future where our technology has turned us into the Ubermenschen,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know. But and I'd like to come like this poem. I feel it would be appropriate to contrast this poem with "We Dinosauria" by Charles Bukowski, poem
Yeah,
that
yeah,
also
yeah.
mentions the dinosaur. They mention similar things, but that
Yep.
is almost Bukowski's poem is almost like a winter solstice. To borrow
Yeah,
an
yeah,
idea from
yeah,
the
I can see
previous
that, yeah.
poem, it's just as the winter
Mm-hmm.
solstice. It's brought about by our technology. It's just as mythological. It's just as mythological, but it is just about the end of the world being so terrible and awful, and radiated men eat the flesh of
Mm-hmm.
radiated
Mm-hmm. I
men,
know, I love that, yeah.
as opposed to a standard uranium neutralizing device that's
Right,
standard in every home.
right, yeah.
The
This one we
radiated.
protected ourselves from the radiation, and his we've been consumed by it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
uh you know hit this is definitely this. Tracy K Smith, the Tower of Babel reaches heaven, and we
Mm-hmm.
travel amongst the stars, and in Bukowski, God comes and knocks us back down.
Well, yeah.
Bukowski
Yep.
illustrates the Tower of Babel and Sodom and Gomorrah and the whole nine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, and one thing too with this, with us being weightless, unhinged, eons from even our own moon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, um, again, you have like lunar cycles, like we're out of this, we're sort of out of the cycle, we'll drift in the haze of space. Again, kind of going to this like graying, replacing everything with nuance.
Right.
It's the haze of space.
Mm.
It's sort of a haze is like, you can't really quite make out distinctions in a haze.
When you're up so high, things become sort of ill defined. It's almost like,
Mm-hmm.
remember how
Yeah.
we were talking about the summer solstice, how
Yep.
a July 4th can
Mm-hmm.
last. That's going to be a week long holiday.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
This is an infinity. They're in some sort of infinite haze, some sort of
Mm-hmm.
infinite haze of bliss and uh, exaltation. You know,
Yep.
humanity being exalted amongst the stars.
Yeah. Yeah. Scrutable and safe once and for all. It's like,
That's like
yeah,
being
that even
being
that.
being placed in a constellation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that just that once and for all,
Right, right.
just once,
But that's the eternal present at that point.
right? Yeah,
You
and for
know,
all times. Yeah, yeah. So, and that's science fiction, So, um, that that's just the artistry of it, the ideas behind it.
this is
It's kind
what
of
poetry is. You know,
yeah, yeah. That's why I think it, both poems that we've touched on, not only are they're just incredibly well written, but they point to point us to something beyond ourselves.
right?
And so, um, I mean, that's why, life on Mars, it's got that seal on it.
Yeah, it's
That's,
great. I mean,
you know,
one, my the poem I did is sort of illustrated sort of the more earthly side of things. Then we illustrated the more heavenly mythological sort of side of things. It is a sort of like maybe it is that, and also some people say the age of Aquarius began when we landed on the moon. There's
yeah, right, right, right.
some people say we landed on the moon. Some people say when we dropped the nuclear bomb, or some people
Mm,
say
mm,
even Woodstock. Woodstock
yeah,
ushered in
yeah,
the
right,
age of
right.
Aquarius.
Hmm, hmm.
But it's interesting. Tracy K Smith with this that sort of Aquarian poetry, sci-fi. Her father actually working on real rockets that sort of helped them get to the moon. And I feel like I'd be remiss if we didn't mention that the sort of the juxtaposition of Tracy K Smith being like being a black American woman, her father being a black American working on the working in with the rocket program. Back in the 1950s when a lot of that sci-fi stuff was popular, there was definitely a lot of racism and Jim Crow going
Yeah,
on at the time.
yeah. So yeah, that's also the time of the sexual revolution, the civil rights movement.
Right.
It was a, sort of a blurring of the lines in many regards.
Right, right. That was the 60s. That was almost like a solstice. The 60s, that kind
Right.
of time has been described as like the
Hmm.
50s into the 60s. That time has been described as like a high water mark.
Right. Right.
So which is also described as the solstice can be described as a high water mark, and the sort of the hazy, blinding light that is the solstice.
Hmm, hmm.
That can kind of lend into those long, ill-defined days. We sort of have some, ill-defined, nebulous future. That is
Right.
also when humanity reaches a similar height.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the beauty of poetry. It gets you talking. I mean, we talked about history, we've talked about mythology, we've talked about art,
Right.
science, and just through the lens or um
The same way the
I guess yeah.
mathematician has all his different variables of,
Yeah.
speed and
Mhm.
energy
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
weight and all these different variables that he uses to pull together a view of the universe. The
Mhm.
poet, we have all the humanities at our disposal, like, from
Right. Yep.
mythology and art and
Mhm.
history and
Mhm.
all the things you were saying,
Mhm.
and even our body, our own personal experience. It's
Right.
an idea.
Right.
It is an idea
Mhm.
that it is a monotheistic idea, even that there is a
Mhm.
synthesis between myself and society.
Yeah. Yeah. And sort of the universe at large, putting you know putting us
Right.
amongst the stars, or even just and you could, with that last poem, Sci-Fi, you could almost kind of take the reverse view and say everything, the opposite of that is like almost the truth, right, in a way. So
Mm,
um and the way that many poets do it, where and artists who look at, Charles Simic was a great example of this, K. Ryan, Robert Frost, who look at like sort of the sort of mundane, aspects of life, and kind of bring the stars in the universe down here to us, you
mm.
know. and the beauty of life creation, um, in sort of the mundane, the small, um, just the small things in life, you know.
Right, right.
So, but yeah, I mean, hey, Tracy K Smith, she's a great one. You know, she's kind of put herself, in my mind, immortalized herself in a way, with this
Mm,
book, and with
right.
several of her poems, put herself in that sort of timeless category.
Great. This is a great American poet. I
Hmm.
would say this is we're kind of I don't know. There was a certain cynicism that kind of came about with a lot of postmodern poetry, you know. And I would almost say that maybe there's an element of contemporary poetry that almost isn't so cynical, you know, that it like
Right.
you know people may apply cynicism to all of the 21st century. But there have
Yeah.
been poets,
Yeah.
you know, whether it's K. Ryan, Tracy K. Smith, they've been that, you know, our world is not just cynicism and nihilism, you know. There is a
Yeah.
sort of,
Yeah.
you know, K. Ryan is sort of more feet on the ground. You know, Tracy K. Smith sort of looking up at the sky, but they're they are both, you know, they're both a sort of a refreshing
Hmm. Hmm.
breath of they both have their money on humanity, and it's sort of refreshing, you know. Not everything's cynicism and nihilism, and I think we may have grown up in that post 9/11 sort of cynical nihilistic haze, but maybe post COVID and moving further into the 21st century we can sort of, you know, get away from that, put some of that behind us,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
despite the brutalities of a 24-hour news cycle.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does force you to search out. I mean, you have to search out good, you know, and it creates a demand for good, you know.
Yeah.
It makes yeah, it makes it yeah, it makes it much needed. So yeah, I think with modern contemporary poets, and you just got to read them. You got to find, and it there's good poetry out there. You just got to find it. You really have to kind of search
Yeah,
a
for
bit,
sure.
and and when you find it, it is good. It's great. Um, and I think with postmodernism, it really only makes sense if you understand everything that came before it. And I think
Mm.
that's why, unfortunately, we have so many, um, why art sometimes sucks today, is because all they're just feeding off of postmodernism, and that's their only diet, and the
Subvert,
postmodernists would,
subvert, subvert.
right, right, yeah, right, and you can't, you can only subvert, like you have to have something to subvert,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
so it kind of, it's like a snake eating its own tail, eventually.
Right,
And so, which a lot of postmodern stuff is great, but it's great in context,
right,
in
of
relation.
course.
Um, and so,
You know,
but
I
yeah,
mean, yeah. So
times change,
they do. Times do
as you
change.
said.
So
Yeah, we'll have a new movement. We're in the middle of a movement. We don't even know it, you know.
right.
Yeah,
May-
no.
Maybe you and I are in on it. Who knows?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. No, I was saying we are the movement. People, you just don't even know it. That's what it is.
They'll tell us later what we were doing.
Right. Right. Exactly. But that's how it always goes. That's how
Right.
it always goes. So that's why anytime, there's things where people are like naming what we're in right now. That's why I always kind of scoff at it. Not to get not there's plenty of examples of that where you know we don't know what it is. We don't know what we're in. We don't.
Right.
We don't have a clue.
Right.
Uh,
In fact,
so
postmodernism is probably somewhat of a of a placeholder. You know.
right,
Um,
right, yeah, exactly, exactly.
it's that is I feel like one day it will be seen as more of a sort of subversion of the self, a time where the
Mm, mm,
self was sort of subverted, you know,
right, yeah,
and the
and that's
where
what, yeah.
a time where the notions and sort of the expressions of the self were subverted, you know.
Right. And that and so what is the what is what is the preeminent figure in this time? The anti-hero. Um,
Mm,
and
right.
so, um, but yeah, it has its place.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, it
Hey,
has its place.
and it makes sense in context. So, and I mean,
Right. Yeah.
and postmodernism is really, you know, a literary critique. It's amazing how a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of literary critics have turned the world upside down. But you know, I
Mm-hmm.
don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Maybe the
That's why it
some.
makes a
Maybe I was
terrible, ugly art sometimes in
right. Yeah.
architecture, where you're like, this is just like why, like
Just
this, you know,
brutal. It's really
yeah.
brutal corporatism. It's like a
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
corporatism because
Yeah.
you know, I mean yeah, like like I said, the self is subverted, and you know our senses of, and you know the postmodernists will point out that your sense of beauty is subjective, your sense of truth is subjective, you know. Yeah, but they imagine they're attacking something subjective, but really they're attacking something subjective. Of course I am not objective. If I were objective, I would be written across the sky.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
immortal. I'm immortal.
Right. Yeah.
Postmodernism
Exactly.
is how
Exactly.
we rediscover mortality. After we went around the
Mm-hmm.
world, we went around the world and
Mm-hmm.
conquered, and you know, we became these almost we when we went to the moon, you know, that's why going to the moon is almost like the ushering in of the age of Aquarius, because we became almost technological gods, splitting the
Mm-hmm.
atom,
Mm-hmm.
going to the moon.
Right. Yeah.
Postmodernism is almost like you're not a god, that's subjective. That beauty, that's subjective. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like you know, who was it? Marilyn Monroe, that's subjective. You know, the truth of, you know, the Enlightenment, that's subjective. But
Well,
the postmodernists, they're just reminding us that we were human beings the entire time.
yeah. Well, hey, man, that's just like your opinion, you know?
And that is my opinion, but we'd like to hear your opinions down in the
Right.
comments. Get
Yeah,
down in the
yeah.
comments, you know, talk
Please.
about it, all these
Right.
things. Please, someone, anyone.
Yeah. Mom, dad, you know, who, you know.
My
No.
mom said she'd
Yeah.
watch this. She never did.
They checked out at the 15-minute mark. They're like, all right, they
I
probably didn't make it
texted
that
this
long.
to my mom. 5 minutes later,
Hmm.
she texted back, "This is great."
Yeah, real quick and we'll go. That reminds me of Dave. I was watching this David Foster Wallace interview with Charlie Rose. I
No,
was
you are
watching it the other
trapped
day.
here. We are not going
I
to
know.
go. You
We
cannot tell
gotta go.
us when
No,
we
we
go.
gotta
You
end
are
it.
trapped
But
here.
it's just funny because he was saying, you know, that same thing with Infinite Jest. Where he's like, I mean, just it just doesn't, you know, I just know they didn't read the book.
Right.
The phrase that's coming out about it, you know, and the amount of time that, you know, the book's been out there, it's just not possible for them to have read it yet. So
Right,
that's
right,
like,
right. Exactly.
you know, but hey, verse take. I'm Justin.
I'm James, humbly.
Yes, right, humbly, and me not so much so. But hey,
This guy's
catch us
haughty.
next time. Right? Yeah, yeah.
See you
But
next time,
hey,
everyone.
yeah,
Signing off. This has been Verse Taken. We've been Justin and James.
all
All right. Good night, everybody.
right, and
All right. Hey, that was a good episode, I think.
yeah. Ah, yeah. I gotta,
Yeah, I know you
I
got to
gotta
get
get,
out of here.
I gotta
It's
get
almost.
running here. My dad already texted me all the work's been done. So, I mean, at this point,
You better go over there
you
with
know,
some beers or something.
I know. Well, he got me beer this morning, so
Oh, okay.
I've already fucked up completely, but it's fine.
All
But
the work's been done.
yeah,
Thanks,
yeah, I
Dad.
know. Right. Yep. I know.
Who's all
Yeah.
over there? Your brother's over
N-
there.
I don't know
All
if
the
he is or not.
work's been done.
I know. I know. I now I gotta go with my tail tucked between my legs. So,
Yeah. Well,
oh, Jesus Christ.
just show. Well, just show them the podcast. They'll be like, "Oh, I
I
completely
know.
understand."
I know.
because
That's
your
now I'm
dad.
like now I'm gonna have to come out and tell him what I've been doing.
Well, look, your dad's the type of guy that'll understand putting off
Yeah.
labor for a poetry podcast.
Right. Yeah.
But hey, man, look, we got to hang up because if we don't, dude, we'll talk for 5, 6,
I
7 hours, dude.
I know. I know. I know. All right, man. Hey, we'll talk here soon, and yeah,
What do
I'll
you? I
help
mean,
figure out
we talked
ideas
Monday
for
last, yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't know.
We can do that.
All right, yeah, just shoot me a text message, dude.
All right.
All right, I'll see you later.
All right. Yep.